Thanks for joining us today. My name is Molly Wheeler. I'm one of the deputy directors at the Utah League of Cities and Towns, joined today by Kate Carlson with the Utah Bureau of EMS here to talk to us about ambulance provider selection. Before I turn the time over to Kate, and Kate, thanks for being here today with us. Really appreciate it. Want to cover a couple pieces of housekeeping. One, this is being recorded and will be available later. Two, we will have slides that we can share. So we have Kate's slides. She's been really generous to share those already. And three, we're going to do questions at the end. So if you have a question, feel free to enter it. The Q&A box is easier for us to track to make sure we've answered them, but we'll try to keep an eye on the chat as well. But just know that we'll answer questions at the end of the presentation. And Kate, with that, thanks so much for joining us. I'll turn the time over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Molly. Thank you guys so much for letting me be here today. My name is Kate Carlson. I am with the Utah Bureau of Emergency Medical Services with the Department of Public Safety. I am a program manager and I oversee a lot of different programs, but one of the programs I do oversee is ambulance provider selection or EMS agency licensing. We're going to talk a little bit today about Senate Bill 215 that passed through this most recent legislative session. And we'll just go ahead and get started. Oh, there we go. So just a quick brief history for you guys. The Bureau has regulated ambulance and paramedic providers. So when we refer to providers, we're referring mostly to the EMS agencies that to ensure that the licensing was actually being taken care of and that we were trying to minimize any kind of duplication, stuff like that. In the past, we operated under historical exclusive geographic licenses. Best way to describe it, it was kind of like whoever had the license maintained that license throughout the history of EMS here in the state of Utah. We would issue both licenses for ground ambulances and paramedic services under two different categories. And those categories were needs and necessities and essential services. So what has Senate Bill 215 done with the historical background of EMS agency licensing here in the state? The biggest thing is it actually removed needs and necessities, which was really ambiguous. And it was really difficult to navigate. It was difficult to navigate for not just EMS licensing, but others that were interested in potentially being part of this program. Another great thing that it actually ended up doing is it expanded essential services. But the key part of this is it took the responsibility of choosing 911 services and interfacility transport. Those are two separate things, and we'll talk more about that later. But those are two separate things. And they've placed it on the responsibility for the counties and municipalities to make that decision for your people and for your citizens. This bill did go into effect May 7th of this year. So what are the responsibilities of counties and municipalities and how do you do it? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll go ahead and just start with talking about 911 services. It seems pretty standard and straightforward. So 911 services is the transport of a patient and that providers, so the EMS agency is providing emergency medical care. So somebody calls 911, an agency gets dispatched, they pick up a patient, and then they transport them to a hospital. In Senate Bill 215, it describes two different ways to provide, maintain, or support 911 services. And so you either provide the service as the city, as the county yourselves. So best example I can think off the top of my head is Sevier County Ambulance, right? Sevier County, they are the county and they are providing that service to their citizens. Or you can enter into an agreement. In some of this, you may be able to utilize with participating in special service districts, or you contract this out. We'll talk more about how you go through doing the selection process, but those are the two main ways that a county or a city or a town can select 911 services. Now let's talk about the other piece of this. I described earlier that there are two pieces of this pie. So we talked about 911, which is picking up the phone and transporting when there is some sort of medical emergency for the patient. Now let's talk about interfacility transport services. So interfacility is the transport of a patient who does not have an emergency medical condition. So that's the key part to this, right? That's one of the key parts. They do not have an emergency medical condition, and it's transfer of a patient either to physician or physician to hospital, nursing facility, patient care receiving facility, mental health facility, or any other licensed medical facility. So think about it. If you need to transport a patient, let's say somebody out in Central Valley needs to come all the way up to IMED up here in the Salt Lake Valley. So they'll utilize an EMS agency to transport that patient from hospital to hospital. So both of these services, 911 as well as interfacility transports, and you'll hear us often call it IFTs, have to be selected by the county or municipality. So what should you guys be doing right now? Understanding and planning ahead. First of all, everybody that's here today, I appreciate all of you jumping on. You guys are obviously taking an interest in this and you're wanting to learn and understand more about this now. So that's a great first step. What I would recommend is that you get to understand your area. So who do you have in your county, in your municipalities that are providing 911 services and interfacility transports? Do you have EMS agencies that are actually providing both? Because there are some agencies out there that are providing both services. And that's where we're happy to come in and help guide some of that conversation. We obviously do the licensing here, so we do have a good understanding. We will also get you guys connected to the agencies that are in your area so that you have a good understanding and a good working relationship with them. The next part of this is understanding when does each license expire. And I didn't put it on here, but I'm just thinking about it. There's a super simple, super easy way that you guys can go and do that right now. If you go to emslicense.utah.gov, you can go to the lookup and you can look up any agency that is licensed in the state of Utah currently. You can look at when the license was originally issued and when the expiration of that license is. We do it for a 4-year period. Typically, there may be some that have a little bit longer. We've granted some extensions to accommodate for this. We also have some that may have a little bit shorter than that. So after you understand your area, what do? You need to plan a formal review. So in Utah Code 1148-103, in order to make the selection for the agencies that are going to be providing these services, you have to make the selection in an open and public meeting. And the way that the code reads right now, the way that we're interpreting it is it has to be done at least 3 months prior to the expiration date of the current license for your agency. That's why it's so important for you to go out and understand when does each agency license expire. You got to plan ahead. These agencies do have to put together some information for the Bureau, and so they need a little bit of a time frame to make sure that they get that information to us. The sooner you do this, probably the better. And darn it, my slides cut off. But what are you going to actually be doing in this meeting? So in the same Utah Code 1148-103, you are required to review the cost, quality, and access goals for the emergency medical services for your town, city, or county. Some of you should be pretty familiar with these. Cost, quality, and access goals have been in place since Essential Services has come to EMS, right? Since they have made EMS an essential service. Most of those agencies should have those already. But again, we do have that information as well. So if we need to kind of help coordinate some of that information sharing, we're more than happy to do that as well. A little bit of a caveat to some of this IFT licensing. So the right to provide, let's talk about that really quickly. So EMS agencies right? We talked about there may be some agencies that are providing both of those services, the 911 and the interfacility transports. That's not the case in all places. That's why it's important to get to know your area. You may have one agency providing 911 services, and then you may have another that is providing interfacility transports. So, what does this mean with the right to provide? If an interfacility transport license is expiring, there is the right to provide or to offer that service to the current 911 provider. Now, that 911 provider could say, no, we're not really interested in doing that. We wanted to keep it as is, or they may come back and say, yeah, we're actually interested in doing interfacility transports. So the county and municipality needs to offer that up to the 911 services if you have two different agencies providing the two different services in your area. There's a couple of different options in terms of how you can select two steps back. So the current 911 provider, if they are not the interfacility transport provider, the current interfacility transport provider's license remains intact until the latter of 2 years of 911 provider accepting the right to do IFTs or the day of the next formal review. So you can do a little bit of alternating if the license expiration dates are not lining up, or you're just trying to make sure that everything is cohesively working. There's a couple of different options there when you are selecting the interfacility transport provider. So what do you need to know about? Let's talk about cost, quality, and access goals. So I mentioned earlier that some of this should not be new to you. If it is, make sure you contact the agency that is currently providing all of that services in your area, and they should have access to the cost, quality, and access goals. These goals establish the expectations for the EMS care that will be provided in your cities, towns, and counties. So what does that all mean? It's pretty simple and pretty straightforward, and I tried not to use some of the same language to define some of these, so let's just talk about them really quickly. What is cost? The cost goal is the financial cost to provide emergency medical services in your area, as well as the cost to a patient for the level of the service provided. Now, there is code that has set the ambulance transport rates for the state of Utah, and that is in 53-2D Part 5. I think it's 503 if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head, but it's definitely in Part 5. So go take a look at that. Everybody's got maybe some sort of different areas and how they're actually providing. Some of you may be responding full-time paramedic. Some of you may be responding full-time advanced EMT. We even have a couple of full-time EMT levels as well. Quality comes and ties back into the expected level of service. So what are you guys providing, right? Are you providing EMT, advanced EMT, paramedic? This quality goal should also encompass any plans to upgrade. So you might have an advanced EMT agency, and they're gearing and ramping up to actually end up providing paramedic services in 5 years, 10 years. Put that expectation in the goal so that you know how to plan appropriately, right? There is a lot more training and equipment supplies that goes into being a paramedic level service versus an advanced EMT. So you guys want to make sure that you're planning ahead. Expectations to access EMS by any individual within the city or the county, and that is the access goal. We're not here to tell you guys how to do the expectations for providing those services to the citizens of your county or city, but it's pretty standard across the board that we usually see that everybody shall have access to it. But if you guys have questions, don't hesitate. We've got lots of great examples. I'm also putting together a template of some really great examples I've seen some other cities put together and how to actually format these goals. And I'm happy to share that template with you guys as well. So what are the steps? And I apologize, there is one step that we did not talk about when we were talking about the public meeting. And we'll cover that here in 1 second, but we did talk about license expiration. Make sure you understand when each of these are expiring. So you may have multiples, you may have some municipalities within your county. Best way to look at this is to make sure that if you have a county service, that you are working with each municipality as well. I love this analogy that was given to me. It's like the cookie. Your county is the cookie, and then all of the chocolate chips in it might be your municipality. So if you've got one ambulance service that's providing everything for those areas, you got to make sure that you are actually working with those municipalities as well. You have to issue an RFP. In the code of 1148-103, counties and municipalities are issuing what's called a request for proposal. So a request for proposal, it basically outlines what services are being requested for the area. So you need to be able to put out something. What are you looking for EMS agencies in your area? And entities, any kind of entity that is a qualified EMS agency, and that can be defined by your RFP for your area. If you guys decide that, maybe we want to just stay within these certain realms, like, no problem. It's your guys' decision on how to issue that RFP. And there has to be some sort of time frame, obviously, and every county is going to be different. We do have state code that we can point you guys to if you don't have an RFP process, so feel free to reach out. Once that RFP and individuals have responded to that RFP, this is a good opportunity to start reviewing your goals, right? Those cost, quality, and access goals. Now, everything comes to the public meeting. You're going to be looking at the goals. You're going to be looking at who responded to the RFP and make the selection for the EMS agencies for those two services in that meeting. Now, where does the Bureau come in? We're talking a lot about what you guys need to do. Where does the Bureau of EMS step in? So after you have made the selection for the 911 services and the interfacility transports, you're going to issue those agencies a letter of support. So that letter of support will have all of the appropriate signatures from county commissioners or from mayors, city councils, that will say, we have selected this agency to do this service and vice versa. That letter needs to be provided to us, to the Bureau, upon the application of them submitting for licensure. So we'll be looking for that letter. We will also be verifying on our end whether, the RFP was actually issued, did the public meeting happen, stuff like that. And then there was a question. If my municipality provides both 911 and IFTs and the license expires in June of 2026, all I need to do is have my city council review the cost, quality, access goals. If they choose, they like what is being provided in the public work session or council meeting, would we need to go through the RFP? Yes, you still need to go through the RFP process. Again, how you want to issue that RFP is totally up to you, for the county, for the city, but it is required in that statute 1148-103 that you do conduct that RFP process. It's a great question. So, license renewal, this is exactly what we just talked about before. Learn what's being provided in your area. I'm going to say that over and over and over again. It's important that you start making those connections with the agencies that you do have in the area. Plan before the license expiration. There is a lot of work that the agencies put together to make sure that they have everything that they need. Doing this 1 month before, the expiration date is going to be really, really, really tough for these agencies to put all of that work together, and it's going to, you know, drag down the pipeline. Our recommendation, again, you guys can choose how you want to do this, but we recommend that you publish the RFP at least 6 months in advance. This gives you plenty of time for individuals to respond to it. It gives you time to plan that meeting ahead. Conduct that meeting no less than 3 months before the expiration of that license. That way, it still gives plenty of time to whoever is selected to provide that. Then you make the selection. Pretty simple, right? You make the selection in that public and open meeting and then provide that letter of support to the agency, which they will provide to the Bureau of EMS for their licensure. So this is my contact information. I am the program manager, like I said earlier. Feel free to call me, text me. That's also my email address, so feel free to reach out. Right now, we'll talk about special service districts here in a second, Darren. Thank you. Linda is just stepping in temporarily. We are filling the position. Hopefully it's soon. We had our agency licensing coordinator retire just recently. So excited for her, but sad to see her go at the same time, especially with all of these changes that we've got going on, right? So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Linda as well. Darren brought up a really good point. What about special service districts? So let's actually bump back to, I don't know if it will let me. So do special service districts have to go through this process? Do they have to go through the RFP? Do they have to go through the selection in the meeting? Yes, they do. But it's not the special service district that actually conducts all of this. Special service districts get their authority from the county. And so they have to go back to whoever the authoritative body is and get the selection through them. There's been a lot of questions, a lot of confusion around special service districts. Again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. But at the end of the day, it has to come from either an incorporated town or city or your county. It cannot come from a special service district. Could you please speak about the requirement to have contracted backup facilities? Yes, that is a very good point. Let's jump back to interfacilities. So we talked about that you have to have 2 different kinds of services, right? You have to have the 911, you have to have interfacility. In the same code of 1148-103, I'd highly recommend you guys go get familiar with it because there is a lot in there. One provider needs to be selected for the interfacilities, but you also have to select a backup agency to do your IFTs. And the reason for that is there might be, times of high demand that if you have an agency that's providing both 911 and interfacility and they're out on runs and they don't have another ambulance to do an IFT, somebody needs to be there for backup. So the way that you do that is you will contract, and it has to be in the same process through that RFP process and then the public hearing selection. And then you will create an interlocal agreement, or you will contract with that provider to provide the backup services for interfacility transports. Thank you for highlighting that. I apologize, I missed that before. And that's the end of all of the information I had to provide. Are there any other questions? Absolutely. Yeah, I can definitely send the template. It's very kind of broad right now for the cost, quality, and access goals, but I'll send that to Molly and then she can send that out along with the presentations. And we will be sending this all out to EMS directors and fire chiefs as well. Penny said, will the RFP process being new, will there be grace given to those agencies going through license renewal over the next 3 months? An RFP with 6 months notice would not be possible at this point. So great question, Kenny. We are working with some agencies right now that are going through this. We have quite a handful actually. Um, and we have given a little bit of grace, right? We have granted some extensions. Some of those are they're a need, they're on a case by case basis. So please have your EMS agencies reach out to us. We'll work with them to ensure that, you know, EMS services are still being provided in your area. I gave the recommendation of a 6-month RFP notice. I'm not saying that's what you have to do. There's actually been a handful of agencies up here in the Salt Lake and Davis County areas that have issued an RFP, and it's been open for maybe just a few weeks, and then they've been able to push that through pretty quickly. Again, that 6-month period was a recommendation. It's not what you actually have to do. And I hope that answered your question, Kenny. So if we currently hold the 911 scene response license, but do not know who holds any particular IFT licenses for the area, how can we find out? Does this apply to 24-hour nursing facilities or only hospital interfacility transports? So there's 2 parts to that question. We're going to pop back up to the interfacility page really quickly here. So first part of that, and I apologize, my lights just went out because I was sitting for too long. If you guys have questions, you can go to that public lookup that I talked about at the beginning of this webinar. If you go to emslicense.utah.gov, you can actually search by, I believe, counties. So you can take a look that way. If you're still not sure, don't hesitate to reach out to me and my team, and we're happy to kind of help coordinate some of that. So the second part of that, does this apply to 24-hour nursing facilities or hospital interfacility transports? So the way that it's defined in code, what an interfacility transport is basically what I have right here on this slide. So it can be transferring of, let's see here, the transfer of a patient is arranged by transferring physician for a particular patient from a hospital, a nursing facility, patient receiving facility, mental health facility, or other licensed medical facility. So yes, it does apply to those that you describe in that question. All right, next question is, could you please speak about the requirement to have, oh, we already answered that one. For those agencies that recently reviewed new licenses, what needs to be submitted to the Bureau and when to identify the backup providers? So there's a handful of you that have provided some licenses, or excuse me, some applications already. We will be reaching back out to you to make sure that we're meeting that requirement. Most of those are going to be fulfilled through your mutual aid agreements, but we will reach out to you with more information. Don't hesitate to reach out to us as well, and we can get those conversations rolling. What is there for 5th class cities? Or what help is there? So we're here to help as the Bureau as much as we possibly can. A lot of this does fall to those cities and counties to initiate this this process. But if you have questions, comments, concerns, we're here to help. My team is here to help. As soon as we get that position filled, their full-time job is going to be focusing solely on this, and so you'll have that resource as well. And if you guys have any other suggestions on how we might be able to provide some help to you guys, please let us know. We're keeping really good track of all of the licenses and their expiration dates. We're reaching out as appropriate, and we're just here to help. We're here to help at the end of the day. All right, next question is from Cameron. Cameron said, can/must an SSD apply to the RFP to provide the service? So, let me clarify that a little bit. So an example I can give is there is a very particular there's an SSD down south that was created specifically for emergency medical services, right? And so that SSD has an agency, they provide the services within an exclusive geographic area. But yes, that SSD must respond to the RFP in order to provide services. So even though your special service district might actually be there to provide EMS, it still falls to the authority of the county to make that decision for that area. I hope that makes sense, Cameron. Absolutely. Next question is, if we don't expire until April of 2027, do we need to do anything until January 2027? So that's totally up to you guys. Essentially, the code only references 3 months prior that meeting, that open and public meeting will take place. But it's up to you guys. If you want to start planning in advance and you want to do it a year out, you're more than welcome to. If you want to do it 6 months in advance, like I said before, we recommend start planning 6 months in advance. That's probably the best way to do it. If you guys want some recommendations, more kind of like targeted recommendations, don't hesitate to reach out to us. It's all how you guys want to handle that process in your area. And those of you who are expiring in 2027, you're lucky, because hopefully we'll have this process just to a T by then. It should be super simple. It is not an annual requirement. No, this is for every time the license will expire. Typically those licenses are for a 4-year period. That's why I recommend you go to our website and look up all of the agencies in your area, kind of get an understanding of where everybody's at. Another key piece to that, I just really quickly want to touch on, is if you have some areas that have, you have a county that's providing, but you might have like a special service district that is providing, the same services, but in a different area, or you might have a municipality that's doing it. And let's say they've got expiration dates all across the board. You could end up doing this multiple times a year, but if you reach out to us as a county or a municipality and say, hey, we would like to align all of these services together, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll do our best to try to accommodate that. We're already doing that for one county here in the state of Utah. So just clarifying that a county must wait until a current license holder license expires before they can make a change, even if there is a closer and higher level of service that can be provided and provide faster care. This is a really good question. So right now, there is, the way that we're looking at everything is whatever is in place license-wise is obligated to be fulfilled until the expiration of a license. Now, that isn't to say that if a county municipality does want to start this process earlier, by all means, absolutely do it, but make sure that you're communicating with the agency that is providing service in that area. Make sure everybody agrees to it, right? Because they are actually under obligation of a current license right now. And per their plan of operations, we will be holding them to that. But again, we're willing to be accommodating as much as we possibly can. I hope that that answers that question. If we're not up for renewal for a couple information about who our backup provider is. So if you're not up for a couple of years, you don't have to worry about it for a couple of years, but start, right? You want to make sure that you have all of that in place. A lot of this is going to actually be fulfilled through mutual aid agreements, so it should be already happening anyway. That's probably the best way to go about doing these. Does BEMS have any role in the appeals process if an agency/private provider appeals to the RFP process? If so, what is that? So the Bureau does not have any role in the RFP process for the appeals. That will all be held at the county and municipality level. Why do RFP before setting cost, quality, and access goals? So honestly, It's totally up to you guys. The reason why I say set the RFP up before the cost, quality, and access goals is because your cost, quality, and access goals should already be in place. This is nothing new. This is something that has been in place for quite a while. We don't suspect to see a lot of changes when it comes to cost, quality, and access. However, that isn't to say that there won't be. If there is going to be, why not put together the cost, quality, and access goals before the RFP and include them in your RFP? That is totally up to you guys. It's just the recommendation that we're giving right now. Cameron said, can municipalities adopt or piggyback on the county's provider selection, or does each municipality need to conduct its own selection process? No, you're totally fine, Cameron. This is actually a really good question. Kind of going back to my cookie analysis. Yeah, if municipalities want to piggyback off of the county's provider selection, from our understanding, as long as your county is okay with that, absolutely. We're essentially only looking for a document that has all of the appropriate signatures on it, right? So if the municipalities want to be a part of that, I highly recommend you reach out to your counties and start that conversation, right? Make it as simple as you guys need to. It doesn't need to be super complicated. All right. Rich said, so the RFP process for a city that provides both EMS and IFT, the city sends out an RFP. Does this mean that the city itself has to submit a response to the RFP to provide that service to the city as well? Or does the city only need to solicit proposals from the other entities and compare that against what the city is able to do for itself? The city will need to respond to the RFP as well. The reason for that is it just makes it very clean across the board. However, again, I'm not here to tell you guys how to do your RFPs. The way that we are reading the code is that everybody needs to respond to the RFP if they want to provide that service. The reason for the RFP is to do comparisons of all appropriate or qualified agencies and evaluate that every 4 years. That's a great question. All right, next question. The wording of the bill makes it sound like a municipality that provides 911 services needs to open up an RFP process and complete with with other agencies to keep providing services. Is that correct? Let me read that one more time. The bill makes it sound like a municipality that provides 911 services needs to open up an RFP process and complete with an outside agency to keep providing services. Is that correct? So if I think I am understanding your question, and I apologize if I'm not, but if a municipality is providing 911 services, the whole point of doing this this evaluation every 4 years is to actually sit down and say, okay, is our service actually meeting our cost, quality, and access goals? Are they doing it, right? And it should be in the hands of the citizens and the counties and the municipalities to be making that determination. It's really difficult at the bureau level to be going to all of these and making sure that it's actually working for your area. If it's not, that's the time to make those changes and evaluate all of that. So I hope that answers your question. So if a city wants to provide its own ambulance service and IFT service, we need to hold an RFP and reply to our own RFP. Yes, that is correct. You do need to reply to your own RFP. How does this impact a county where the search and rescue provider holds an EMS license to provide non-transport 911 services, while a contracted municipality is responsible for both 911 transport and interfacility license in the same area? This is a really good question and actually highlights kind of an interesting part of our code. What this person is talking about, when you're looking at 53 2D Part 5, there are off the top of my head, I think there are 4 different licenses that you can apply for. So you have the 911 ground ambulance transport, you have the interfacility, you can have both. And then there are 2 non-paramedic or paramedic non-transport licenses as well, and those are part of an exclusive geographic area. I'm not gonna lie, I don't believe that this has a huge impact with it, because there should still be 911 transport in the area, even if it is a licensed or a non-licensed paramedic service. Okay. And that was all of the questions in the Q&A. I'm just double checking the chat.
Yeah, I think we have one in the one in the chat, Kate. How does it work when there's only one choice, as in the county is the only possible option?
So then whoever is responding to the RFP, right? That's probably going to be your only choice, right? That isn't to say that others won't respond to the RFP. But you may only have one agency that responds to your RFP.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kate. If folks still have questions, we'll stay online for a minute or two, just to see what else trickles in. If not, Kate, thank you so much. Kate's email is up, so if you have additional questions about anything, feel free to either give her a call or shoot her an email. And thank you all so much for joining us. And we'll be sure to get this posted and have those slides sent out to those who registered for the event. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And Kate, thank you so much for your time and expertise. It's been a minute since I've seen someone rattle off so many different code sections, just easy breezy.
You know,
Very impressive.
I gotta blame Darren Bushman, who is on this call. He forced me to learn these, and I gotta say, I'll probably never forget them. So
Amazing. Well, thanks to you and thanks to Darren. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap everything up. Thanks everyone for joining us.